Alright, what's up guys? This is Brett from FBA Excel, and in this training video I'm actually going to be going over some of the core Apex PPC concepts and best practices that we've learned just throughout the development of Apex. So this first slide, I just wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of expectations and what Apex can do for your account. This is just a pretty typical scenario of results. That this is actually one of the brands that I used in developing Apex, so you can see over the course of the past year and a half or so, pretty decent scale as far as growing with pay-per-click, and this is just sponsored ads. The main thing here to think about is it's basically math. So we're optimizing our bids, we're adding new campaigns, we're utilizing specific tools to reduce wasted ad spend, and it's definitely attainable to achieve results like this. In fact, much better. I will say this account was subject to a lot of testing, so a lot of just trying things to see if they work. Not all of them did. So, but you can still see a good ACOS, and not perfect. There's a lot of room for improvement, but the idea here is to just try to minimize the effort and maximize the results, and that's definitely what Apex can do for you. So this graphic here, if you understand these core concepts, you will do great using Apex. It really is built around these concepts here. So just kind of starting up here at 1 o'clock. I'm going to teach you more in depth in this video how to set up your initial bid inputs. So the SKU level bid inputs is kind of where you want to start with Apex. They're going to be essentially any campaign that you've structured to have a single SKU within that campaign, so you don't have multiple SKUs within like a single ad group, for example. It'll automatically figure out which ones those are and just kind of assign the bid logic to those as kind of a base level precedence. You can see kind of a precedence breakdown here, and it'll start to make more sense to you the more you kind of grasp and understand how the pieces of Apex fit together. But what you've got essentially two things. You've got a SKU dashboard, and then you've got a bid override table. Anything you put on the bid override table, and you can essentially put targets, campaigns, portfolios. You can't put ad groups yet, but we may add that in the future. But any of those that you pick off as specific targets or campaigns or portfolios off your bulk file, put on that bid override table, it's going to take precedence over the SKU dashboard when it comes to bidding. So in this next training video after this, we're actually going to walk through in Apex and kind of go over these concepts just to kind of drive them home in the system. But just know that that bid override table does take precedence over your SKU dashboard inputs. But the SKU dashboard inputs is kind of where you want to start in setting up Apex. I do have some slides here. In the next few slides, it's going to go over setting up our initial SKU level bid inputs based on a few examples. And what we really want to focus on that we've learned is conversion rate. So certain products, like the slide I showed you before here, my conversion rate on that account is typically around 5 to 6% on PPC. It'll be up over 10% for our organic plus PPC, but for just PPC, it hovers around 5 to 6%, and that's because it's really heavily based on the aesthetics of the product. So the customer base is like 95% female, and it's heavily subject to the different designs, colors, and things like that, as opposed to kind of a more run-of-the-mill product, maybe like, I don't know, eyeglass cleaner, for example, where you're not going to really care as long as it's got good reviews. Things like that will have generally upwards of 8%, usually much higher than that. So we found that kind of 8 to 10%, really, we've made it 8 is the cutoff of where you want to structure your initial SKU bid inputs a little bit differently. You can be more aggressive if your conversion rate's over 8%. So we're going to go over that here in the next few slides and kind of how to set that up. But then the idea of the bid override table is to take advantage of more aggressive bidding. So your SKU dashboards is kind of your more conservative bids to where you're trying to get more profitable conversions, and then your bid override table, you pick off kind of your top performing, top converting targets, campaigns, portfolios, things like that. You can group them different ways, but you pick those off and you put them on the bid override table to balance out with more aggressive bidding. So the SKU dashboard on the conservative end, aggressive bidding with the bid override table, and you get a nice, profitable, steady growth account that really just does well. So that's kind of the phase one there. Phase two is going to be your daily bid optimization. That's what Apex is really nice for. You're essentially just going to download a new bulk file whenever you want to optimize your bids. It takes about, I don't know, 30 seconds. You pick a custom date range based on what kind of data you want to look at. Usually we recommend starting out, we've got a few different bid algorithms, but the most kind of conservative and proven to this point is the Apex bid algorithm. And it's going to use typically a 30-day data range. You can use 60 if you want more data, but we find that 30 just works well for giving you enough data points, and then also just a good snapshot of kind of how the current market landscape's acting right then. So the idea is you're going to download that, import it into Apex. You can make any tweaks or minor adjustments to your SKU dashboard and bid override table inputs if you need to. And then we have a few really high-level auditing and troubleshooting / ad insight tools you can look at if you really want to analyze kind of some trends in between optimization sequences, look at some placement data, things like that. And you have the option then to make some tweaks to, say, your bid override table if you're noticing a trend in maybe one of your products and you want to kind of duplicate that trend to try to scale that up in parallel. Now's the time to do that, and then it's just a one-click operation then to update all your bids, and then you're going to upload a file right back to the Campaign Bulk Ops Manager. Whole cycle, start to finish, you can do it in about 5 minutes if you're not going to make a bunch of changes, and then we recommend doing that daily to start out with, to be honest. And then if you start having really strong performing days where the things are doing well, we just recommend don't touch that until the sales and your performance metrics are kind of starting to drift in the wrong direction. Then you would want to optimize again, just kind of go in that type of process. So that kind of does it for phase two. Phase three is where we really focus on all of our bulk-based optimization tools. There's quite a few in Apex. If you haven't checked out some of the other training videos, go back through those and you can kind of see more in detail how all of them work. They all have their advantages and their kind of specific things that they're executing, but you're gonna definitely leverage those on a weekly basis. To one of the most key ones is to move high converting targets that are just starting to pick up steam and momentum. You want to move those just from your more conservative SKU-based bids that they're probably getting at that point over to the bid override table, and it's just a few clicks to make that happen. And then once they're over on that bid override table, you're gonna set the bids, the bid settings for those at a more aggressive state. So you're just really starting to scale those, and it's almost like you can think of the bid override table as a scale center and like a testing center, if you will. And it also has the ability to take things like branded campaigns, defensive ASIN targeting campaigns. You can put those in portfolios across different SKUs. Maybe you have all your defensive campaigns, for example, in one portfolio. You can put those as one portfolio on the bid override table, and that really makes it easy just to kind of keep things concise and get an understanding of as a whole how those types of strategic campaigns are performing. And the nice thing about those, and like branded as well, is they're usually going to do well. So you can kind of reduce the amount of data you're assessing and stuff like that by grouping things. That's another thing that bid override table is nice for. Stoptimizer, poor performers, dupe checker. There's various tools that are focused on reducing wasted ad spend, and those can just make significant impact throughout the week, and you'll just notice significant improvements month to month as you start to utilize those tools. And then third bullet point there is scaling the campaign budgets for things that are really doing well, and that's just a kind of a quick assessment on your bid override table. It's got all your metrics right there that you need to see. And then you can set some quick sorts to go find those campaigns on the on your bulk sheet, and then just scale up your campaign budgets, and just making sure you're not running out of your daily budget each day on those, because you're definitely leaving sales on the table if you are. You can see kind of the core philosophy down there in the bottom right for balancing your conservative bidding on the SKU dashboard with more aggressive bidding on the bid override table. That's if you understand that fundamental concept and utilize the two dashboards accordingly, you're really going to do well. The nice thing, if you do have products with over conversion rate, PPC conversion rate of 8%, you're going to be able to be a little more aggressive even on the SKU dashboard and just really have a more profitable account out the gate. So phase 4, you definitely don't want to forget about this one. Start using Apex. You're going to start seeing as you do the daily bid optimizations that your ACoS is going to start improving. You're going to start to get a better feel for things, but if you do forget phase 4, you're not going to really grow at the rate you could. And it's utilizing some of our keyword tools, the search term inspector tool, which actually comes integrated into Apex, and then the Flex bulk campaign builder. That those two kind of go hand in hand for just very quickly generating new campaigns in bulk. We do recommend adding 5 to 10. We've seen that's kind of the perfect balance between scaling up and keeping your economics in check. So 5 to 10 new campaigns each week. That can be across any of the SKUs, but you do try to keep kind of things balanced based on how much room you have in your margins and things like that. But you can see the table there. That's really the core campaign structure that we found works really well. Do recommend all single SKU campaign ad groups if you can help yourself, with the exception of the low bid auto, and we've seen that work well. You do want to get that campaign, specifically the low bid auto, on the bid override table so you can kind of monitor that, because the SKU dashboard does not account for multi-SKU ad groups. That's one key point to understand. So as far as exact all single keyword campaigns, broad and phrase, 5 keywords max per campaign, product ASIN targeting, 10 ASINs max, defensive, 10 ASINs max, branded, 10 keywords max. We talked about the defensive and branded being portfolio-based bidding. We can talk about that in the next video. Autos, we have kind of 3 auto structures that we like, that we've seen work well. And the nice thing about Apex is it's all going to be, all the math's going to be done for you and kind of all the optimization. So it may seem like you're overdoing it a little bit here with autos, but the poor performers are going to kind of quickly fall to the bottom, and the top performers are going to come to the top, and you're going to be allocating your budget essentially automatically. So the auto 4 means all 4 of the auto targets, meaning there's loose match, close match, substitutes, and complementary. So all 4 of those in one campaign, and then the auto 1 times 4 means you've split out those 4 target types in their own campaign and you've paused the other 3. And then the low bid auto, we recommend actually launching 2 of those exact same ones with all your products in them, and that's going to be at a much lower bid. So if you're like average CPC, let's say, is like 80 cents, this one's going to be at like 10 to 15 cents. And this is trying to suck up all the keywords that nobody else is targeting, and Amazon's just trying to optimize you for. So you'll notice that typically is a very high performing campaign. All of these, we actually do recommend dynamic down only. That's just going to help you on the optimization and bidding front to try to maintain profitability. We do have some slick features with the bid override table that's going to ensure, if you want to stick at like top of search placement, that you're always going to be there, kind of eliminating the need for the up down fixed, a lot of those type of strategies that I've seen others use. You can pretty much get away with dynamic down only with using Apex. All right, and then finally, 5 is going to be more of your kind of longer term or higher macro level things that you can do to your account to really make significant impact in short periods of time. If you want troubleshooting as far as figuring out campaigns that are not performing well, or maybe they were at one time and they're not anymore, we have one of the best reports I've ever seen for that. So definitely check out the Apex Daily Metrics report for that, and allow you to really dive in and quickly see what's going on, or what may have gone wrong. And also looking for positive trends and trying to duplicate more of that and eliminate more of the negative trends. Just a really good concept and thing you can implement. As well as doing a Pareto analysis. We recommend doing this either monthly or every 2 months, just to assess kind of the targets in the lower 80% that aren't really performing well. You can just do kind of a bulk pause on those and usually see significant ACoS improvements month over month if you're using this strategy. But if you do this, you do want to keep in mind that obviously some of the targets and whatnot that you've paused, you're not going to be bidding on anymore, which can help your ACoS, but it may hurt your sales a little bit. So that step 4 of weekly adding new campaigns is really going to be of the utmost importance. So again, understand these concepts. If you have any questions, feel free to message into support and we can go over them more in detail. Hopeful that some of the other training videos that are covering these you kind of grasp and rewatch, but focus on this screen. I mean, these are the main things. If you get this and utilize Apex on a daily basis, I can ensure you that your PPC efforts is going to definitely get better. All right, so I mentioned the bid algorithms briefly in the previous slide. There is kind of 3 core ones right now we have integrated. The iterative method is based on small fixed dollar increment changes based on different ACoS thresholds. So this is made famous by Meniel Elias. If you haven't checked out his stuff, definitely check it out. He's the man when it comes to PPC. He sells in supplements, and this specific method, we've tested this on a couple different accounts, and a couple of them are supplements, and they tend to do very well. It tends to do very well in accounts that have some budget to spend. You can spend a lot, but you can also sell just a ton. So especially once you kind of get things dialed in. Data source range, you're going to do like a rolling 7 days, excluding the past 2 days, as opposed to these other ratio-based methods are going to be either 30 or 60-day data sources. So you're really getting a good snapshot of kind of how the current landscape is on that 7-day, as close to today as possible, and you're making those incremental changes based on your current metrics and just trying to dial in your performance. So it's a good strategy for sure. Can just sell a ton. So if you've got budget to spend, that's definitely one that you'd want to test. Revenue per click times target ACoS method. This is pretty common in a lot of the SaaS platforms that I've seen as kind of a base bid model, and it's going to basically take your revenue per click times a target ACoS that you specify and do a ratio calculation to allocate a new bid. This one's nice. The reason I don't recommend it for those just getting started with the system is it does have larger bid swings, so you're not going to be seeing more of a consistent downward trend in your ACoS the more you use this. It may, one day you may be bidding 20 cents, the next day you may be bidding 20 or 75 cents, just based on how the current metrics shake out. So that's, for that reason, it's one that after you get going, it's worth testing and just seeing if you get better results with it. But for just getting started, I highly recommend the Apex bids method, which is the third one here. Formerly we called that the waterfall method. We switched over to the Apex method, but definitely my favorite for getting started. It's essentially the most conservative, but depending on how you structure it, you can really make it kind of a good balance between, again, conservative and aggressive bidding strategies using the SKU dashboard and bid override table, but really gives you a nice smooth transition and good understanding as far as tracking as well of how your bids are affecting the different targets. It is going to deploy different ratio formulas depending on which ACoS thresholds you're in. So if you have a high ACoS threshold set, it's going to be more conservative to try to reduce those bids for anything that is performing above that threshold. If you've got targets that are performing in an acceptable ACoS threshold, it's going to make performance adjustments on those as well, just to try to help boost them and make them even a little bit better. So recommended data range on this one is 30 days is what we've seen work the best. And then the nice thing about Apex is built in Google Sheets, so you can add custom algorithms. This is something that the team here would have to do, but if that's something you need, it's definitely something we can make happen. And nice thing is it becomes kind of a one-click operation. So if right now you're doing a bunch of sorting and filtering and different things like that to try to optimize your bids, and it's taking you a while, we can make it very, very quick. All right, so getting into the multiple ways to configure the bidding with Apex, I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but there's the SKU dashboard, and then you've got the SKU dashboard plus bid override table. So you don't have to use the bid override table. That's the key thing here. You can just, if you want to use the SKU dashboard and you've got all your campaigns for the most part structured in single SKU campaigns, then this is a quick way to get started. You would essentially import all of your SKUs into the SKU dashboard, set the inputs, and hit go, and it's going to start optimizing. The thing to keep in mind here is there is going to be a account level row on the bid override table, but that's the only thing that the bid override table would be used for in that case. It just essentially accounts for all of the multi-SKU campaign ad groups then that would kind of fall back because the SKU dashboard isn't accounting for those. And you'll see how that works here as we go into the system on the next video kind of live. But just know that that's kind of method 1. You can use just SKU dashboard only. Method 2 though is the recommended, where you've got the SKU dashboard for your more conservative bids, where you're trying to get profitable CPCs, and we're going to have the bid inputs we're going to go into here in the next slide, that there's kind of 2 ways to set that up depending on your current conversion rates for those SKUs. But then the bid override table becomes kind of the more aggressive scale/testing platform that you can really start to try to take some good converting targets to the next level. I've got the bid override precedents down there again, where we've got the option to throw targets, campaigns, portfolios on the bid override table. And then if they're not on the bid override table, you're going to be bidding based on the SKU dashboard. And then for anything that's, for example, multi-SKU campaign ad groups, that's going to fall back to the account level. All right, so getting into the setting up the initial bids, this is going to be a really important concept to understand, and just getting started in the right track quickly. What you're going to want to do is import all your products. That's done in the onboarding video if you haven't watched that. You'll get all your products into the SKU dashboard, and then it'll be time to set up your initial inputs. Quick way to get a good understanding of what you should set for those: hop over to the Apex menu, go down to Add Insights and select Add Insight Tiles, and then set up 2 tiles, one for your cost per click and one for your conversion rate. And you'll see your match types there at the top, and then you'll have the metrics broken out by match type with a grand total on the far right. So right there you can see over here in the conversion rate table in blue, we've got some that are over 8% conversion rate, and then some SKUs that have less than 8%. You kind of want to take note of that. As well as your average CPCs for the exact match type. Take note of that per SKU and kind of just jot those down. So the basic idea is, for your SKUs that are in blue that have over 8% conversion rate, we're going to be a little more aggressive to get going, and it's going to be based on some of these best practices that we've found just to kind of work well in getting started. And then after you've ran for a few weeks, you can start to make tweaks and pull different levers on these inputs depending on what you're seeing. But for the most part, this example is a good starter to go by. We've gotten our 80-cent cost per click average there from the tile that we went over in the last slide, and we've seen that this CVR is greater than 8%. You do need to know your break-even ACoS, which is kind of the same thing as your gross margin that you calculate. So figure that out. We'll assume in this one it's 40%, and then just based on those numbers there, we can start to assign some initial inputs to get started with. Target ACoS, you're going to take your 40% and just subtract 10% from that. So that's where we get the 30, and we plug that in for target ACoS. Low bid, we just recommend setting that to like 5 to 15 cents is maybe the highest we go on the low bid, but typically we just set it at 5 cents. So for max bid, we recommend taking 80% of your exact cost per click. So in this example, it'd be 80% times 80 cents, which is 64 cents. Keep in mind, this is going to be one of your main levers that you can change going forward to really scale up that SKU, because just know that this max bid, for any targets that meet the SKU dashboard requirements, this is going to be the upper limit bid that it's going to be set to. So Apex could consider, based on your current performance metrics, that you could be bidding at like $1, but if you have 64 cents set, it's going to bid 64 cents. So getting started, again, the idea is conservative stuff on the SKU dashboard, your high performing targets on the bid override table. So if you have specific targets you know that perform well, get them on the bid override table, and you can elevate your bids for those. And then you're doing a nice job then of, again, balancing out the aggressive stuff on the bid override table, conservative stuff on the SKU dashboard. We're focused again right now on the SKU dashboard. This is all SKU dashboard inputs. High ACoS threshold is going to be break-even ACoS minus 10%. So 40 minus 10 is 30. That's where the 30 comes from. Mid ACoS, break-even ACoS is, mid ACoS is going to be break-even ACoS minus 20. So 40 minus 20 equals 20, so that's where the 20 is coming from. In this Apex bid algorithm, and you can go back, watch the video that talks about these in more detail, but because there's a gap 30 to 20, anything that is any targets performing between 30 and 20 ACoS in this case is actually not going to be changed their bid, so kind of keep that in mind. Increase bid by 10 to 20%. This is taking into account this 15% here. That's just a good average we recommend starting with. But that's going to be for the Apex bid algorithm. It actually takes for anything between like 0 ACoS up to your mid ACoS threshold. It's going to take your cost per click and then increase that by 15%. So that's what that means. All right, and then click limits is going to be to try to just kind of mitigate anything early on that is allocating quite a bit of spend and clicks, but really not performing well. So you can set those just kind of based on what your gut feel is. But in general, we recommend anywhere from like 10 to 15 clicks without a conversion. That's going to be setting the bid to a fixed amount. We recommend a little bit lower amount, and then you can always assess these in bulk to see if you want to give a little more budget to certain ones. But in general, it's a good way to start. So 10 to 20 clicks, click limit bid set to 15 cents, and then your impression limit. This is the goal here is to start to get conversions for targets that just aren't getting any impressions. So it's going to incrementally increase by this fixed amount every bid optimization cycle. So say you're at 25 cents today and it hasn't reached 300 impressions yet in the date range that you've selected, it's going to increase up to 28 cents now, and then to 31 cents. So it's just going to keep going up until you start to get conversions, and then once you get conversions, it's going to flip over to your formula-based bidding. So that's kind of how we recommend setting it up. This zero conversion bid setting only applies if you're not using the impression limit increase, kind of incremental increase feature. And that's just going to be a fixed amount that we recommend just taking your exact CPC and dividing it by 2, and you get a pretty good number there that will hopefully convert on most new targets that you're adding. All right, so moving on to the less than 8% CBR SKUs, and this is that screenshot that you saw on the second slide. This is how most of those SKUs actually shook out. So this is kind of the initial settings based on those metrics that we started there, and we've seen some other accounts do real well with these initial settings as well. But I'm not going to read over this. It's the same concept as the last slide, but just know that these are going to be more conservative inputs to start with because they do have a lower conversion rate, and we're going to be balancing the settings on the SKU dashboard with more aggressive settings on the bid override table, which we're going to be talking about here next. Actually, after this slide. But one of the core concepts that we talked about there in the third slide was reducing wasted ad spend and then migrating high-performing terms from just your general bulk file and getting them stuck on the bid override table so you can test them and hopefully scale them up. These are some good, just kind of core filter settings that if you start with these, I don't think you can go wrong. Just know that you can change them if you want to kind of have your own range that you're looking at. But go back and watch the Stoptimizer video and Search Term Inspector tool. Those are going to be what these top filters are going to be influencing. And then the bulk ops filter video talks about these filters here, where you're just really going to quickly be able to navigate your bulk ops file and pick off these high-performing targets. And it's something you're going to actually want to do throughout the week, because you can add new targets that are starting to perform well at the lower level, a more conservative level, move them over to the bid override table throughout the week, and you'll just slowly again start to scale up your campaign in a really good economic fashion that's not throwing all your numbers out of whack. All right, so here's the bid override table, and this was where, if you understand how to use this, you're going to do some serious damage in the right direction. So what's this used for? It's, again, used for account level bid settings. We talked about just setting the system up to use the SKU dashboard. You can definitely do that. It's the quickest way to get started. So that would mean you don't have anything on the bid override dashboard. It's just all on the SKU dashboard. With the exception of multi-SKU campaigns, those aren't accounted for on your SKU dashboard. So if you've got a bunch of campaigns that have multiple SKUs in a single ad group, for example, the bid optimization settings for those are going to be based on the bid override table, but it's just going to be this single row here you see at the top that says account, do not delete this row, and then you're going to have bid settings over here. You're going to want to set those, if you are using this strategy, you're going to want to set those at just a good, conservative. I would set them at a conservative to get started setting, and you're going to use similar settings that we went over on the previous few slides, but just know that these are going to be where all of your multi-SKU ad group campaigns are adjusted. So the more common way to use this though is, again, to get high-performing targets, high-performing portfolios, high-performing campaigns. You can group them up different ways, but get those things on the bid override table, and we go over in other videos how to actually do that, and I'm going to actually go into a few more examples here on the next video, so check that out. But just know that portfolio bidding is really great, especially for like defensive, branded, or if you have similar grouped kind of strategic based campaigns. It's real easy to just put the portfolio on there and then set some more aggressive bid override settings for those. But by far the most utilized way to use the bid override table is putting high converting targets, and again using some of those quick find filters for your top performers or your top converting rate performers or your top placements. So we've got one for that. So just looking at those throughout the week and saying, oh well, this one's not on there yet, let me get those on there. And then we've got a quick way to check to see if you've already got those on there. Essentially when you paste them into the bid override table, it's going to be color coded if they're already on there, so you can always just quickly try it and say, oh, it's on there, and you can always delete it if it is. So but get those good ones on there, and then the goal here over in blue is to elevate your bid override settings so you're bidding more aggressively than you otherwise would be on the SKU dashboard. So with that, we recommend these kind of criteria to get started. For your target ACoS, set that to your break-even ACoS. So in this example, my gross margin is 40%, so my break-even ACoS is 40%. Set that to 40. Max bid, set that high enough so you should never run out. So before, if you remember, we did like 80% of the exact match CPC for these. Now we're really gonna increase this. So you can see our CPC on these are only like 20 cents. In here, we're going up to $1 because it's quite possible that Apex could be saying, oh well, your performance based on your current conversion rate and ACoS and all the other factors it takes into account, you could be bidding at 90 cents on this and still doing very well, and you're going to get better placements then. So it's almost like an automatic way or systematic way to test new placements, to just bid more aggressively and hopefully scale these up while keeping kind of everything economic wise in check. So that's definitely one of the high triggers there, is your max bid column. Again, target ACoS is a pretty impactful lever to pull, and then the others are going to be these three in red, where your high ACoS, we recommend setting that to break even minus 10, so that's where your 40 minus 10 is. Mid ACoS is going to be just 10% less than that, and then the increase by, we're actually going to increase in this case by 50%. So that's going to say anything that's between 0 ACoS and 20%, we're actually going to allow that to bounce up by 2 times. So that is that's kind of the general settings we recommend to get started with. If you do go back and watch some of the bid override related videos, you'll see that one strategy we like to employ is off to the right on the bid override table. We recommend on a daily basis, as you do the different optimization sequences, you actually keep track of certain metrics, and you can just essentially write the date in the header and then copy like your ACoS, for example, or the number of orders, for example, and you should hopefully start to see your trends then as you record those metrics to start moving in the right direction. And if they are moving in the right direction, you can tweak these even further and just really get more power behind them. So that's kind of the idea. This last slide here is really focused on the daily metric report. I talked about this being one of the most powerful reports I have ever seen for sponsored products. And as you can see, it gives you your 30-day breakdown. You can analyze trends that aren't working well or things that are working well. In this case, good example, you can see I was spending $30 a day, and then all of a sudden it just drops off. Well, you can really quickly dive into it. If you actually double click on any of these numbers, it's going to take you to that day and look at that campaign and see what's going on. Over here, you do have all the campaigns, and what's hidden behind here, since it's my data, is actually what's on the bid override table related to these campaigns that's driving most of this impact. So we've got some really slick filters where you can just do like a single click on the campaign name, click this search filter, and it's actually going to go into your bulk file and go right to that campaign, so you can see all your targets and just really quickly diagnose what's going on. And the idea here is do more of what's working well, do less of what's not working well. So you can obviously see off here to the right, you've got macro level metrics that are critically important, and then what's even slicker is you've got all your placement metrics here. And where this can be super powerful is say you're converting really well on product pages, for example, but it may be something that you wouldn't think that you would. Well, you're not going to know that unless you're analyzing it like this. You can look and see what your cost per click is for those placements and adjust your bid override settings if you've got, say, a specific target on there that you've been testing. Well, you can test it, you could duplicate it, test it at top of search and product pages, or you could just focus on what's really working well and then go that route. So very, very powerful with this report. There are multiple ways to use it. You can switch out the metrics here. Right now we're looking at spend. Orders is another way I like to look at it and just see what's kind of my top. You'll find that, again, Pareto principle applies. 20% of kind of the upper part of this chart is what's really going to be driving your account. But with this view, you're really going to be able to assess the trends and be like, well, hey, this is something working really well. Let me duplicate this across a couple similar SKUs that I think it would work well, and you'll start to see your account really take an exponential effect if you go this way. So, all right, guys, I think that's it for this training. In the next one, we're actually going to be diving in start to finish, and I'm going to be showing you how to implement some of these concepts again. Go back and really study this one here. This is where all the magic happens. If you understand this, you're going to be golden. And the core here that I didn't really talk about in the slides that is super important is adding new campaigns and then letting Apex do the work for you as far as optimizing. If you really focus on utilizing all these tools, you're going to be nothing but in better shape here in the next coming months. So, all right, I'll see you guys in the next video, and thanks for watching.